Blade Runner Off-World Blimp video number 3. In this video, we'll be looking at the first blimp 3D prints, which turned out amazing. This video will answer a few of the questions from the builders who have begun working on their blimps from my 3D files. We're going to closely examine the gondolas, front and rear, including the bonus alternate front gondola. Also, the antenna arrays, the shadow boxes, and engines, including the alternate Bill George engine. We'll talk about the various options for the screens and monitor covers, including some ideas for bringing the blimp to life with electronics and video screens. We'll examine the 3 different hull options and give some advice on 3D printing. Okay guys, everything is done on this model. All of the decals are made. That took a good couple of weeks of just scrutinizing over every last detail of those photos. But the 3D model is done. This is already out to a few of the pre-buyers. I think there's a couple 3D prints in progress now, besides the ones I've been working on to test print. But look at this blimp. My God. This is the angle you see it from mostly in the movie. Kind of looking at it like this. I think there's one time we see it directly from below. But on that darkened stage with all those lights on, it's like you really don't comprehend the shape of this thing. But from all the reference materials, from the amazing build that Jason made, and Adam and Kate building that kit, those guys did all the heavy lifting. But this is the first time a 3D modeled, 3D printable model is available. So I'm going to go ahead and spend a few minutes going over some of the details and individual pieces on this kit. Okay, let's take a closer look at this blimp. I'm in Fusion 360 right now, and I can rotate around this guy. So let's go ahead and start here at the front. We have a front gondola. This is 3 parts. There's a cap, a body of the gondola, and an antenna. The antenna is modeled straight, but the film-used version, it's kind of bent and twisted. It's kind of starts straight and it's sideways. But anyways, in this particular model, it is a straight antenna. Okay, so check this one out. This is an alternate front gondola for any of you modelers that want to create the blimp before Ridley made his changes. This is the blimp that mostly you see with Bill George posing with it, working on it. A lot of behind the scenes that show this as the front gondola. As you can see, I modeled it with 2 figures because you can see 2 little guys in the cockpit of this. I forgot which kit this came off of. This is one of the old Tamiya what was it? It was a Canon tractor truck, an old German vehicle. They used a cab and they added on some parts. So here you go. This is the alternate, free with your file set, front gondola. Oh, you can also see, before I leave this, you can see the scale. So this was the original scale of the blimp. These guys here in relation to the size of the blimp. And they replaced this gondola with this gondola. And you can see the big size difference because the little guys would be inside of this cabin. These are your 2 front spotlights. So you can see these are modeled slightly different positions. For left and right, they sit at the very tip of the hull. Very front tip. You can print these as is. You can take them apart. You can replace the bulbs that are inside here with LEDs, laser pointers. You can motorize these if you wanted to. They're really tiny, super small, but very highly detailed. Beautiful detail on that very tip of the nose. We have the main hull. This is modeled top and bottom. It's shelled for easier printing. I have a video that goes into a little more detail on this hull, but it is very easy to print. There is a couple different options for this hull. There's actually 3 options for this hull. Let's talk about these 3 different hulls that come with the digital file set. The first one is this one. This is the main hull. It's divided top and bottom. You'll notice that there are no wires on this hull at all. There's no side wires. This is because this version is intended to be printed top and bottom, and then the wires detailed later by the modeler, just using this regular cheap electrical gauge wire, just sticking it on there and detailing. The second version has wiring. If I can get over here. This has wiring already in place for the screen used blimp. So wiring, cables, all this twisted stuff goes from here at the back to this lobe here at the front on both sides. Very well detailed. And again, this is for printing cables in place. If you're doing, maybe you'll be printing this blimp at a smaller scale, and you want those wires to be in place on the sides. Third version is the pre-production version of the blimp that has the cables that run all the way to the nose. Now they removed these front cables from the third to the last lobe to the front. Those cables were removed. If someone wants to build that pre-production version of the blimp that uses the alternate front gondola, you'll want to print this. This has the cables that go all the way to the nose. Okay, so here you go. 3 versions. And by the way, if you wanted to print this first version, the main version, without these cables, just bring it into Mesh Mixer. And let me show you real quick. If you just make sure that I'm highlight over this, and I go to Edit, Separate Shells, and this is going to allow me to separate those front cables and come over to Transform, and I can remove these front cables. Separate deal entirely. So just go ahead and axe those cables if you wanted to, but there they are as an option to remove those cables. Same with these other 2 holes. You can remove these cables. But anyway, those are your 3 options for the blimp hulls. Here is a closer look at the rear gondola. This is version 2. So I'll be sending this updated version to you guys that have already working on your blimps. There's some improvements on this, but here is the mega detailed rear gondola. Let's move on to the antenna, the antennae. There are 12 different antennae. And let me scan around these so you can see the detail on these. They're just absolutely beautiful. They are crazy too. I mean, there are details that are very tall. There are very strangely angled shapes, bricks that are coming off of this, vents, weird, crazy arrays that are popping out sideways. 12 different antennae, and you just print each one of them twice and place them around your blimp. These are pretty well modeled. I mean, these will print on most resin printers at the 30-inch scale. They start getting more difficult when you shrink these down. So if you're going to print a 24-inch blimp hole, these should still print. They'll be a lot more challenging. So that's another reason why I scaled this blimp up to 30 inches, is these are much more reasonable to print. One of the things that you want to consider is, instead of using these rods, the ends of each antenna, you might want to cut those off, abbreviate them, and use brass rod instead. That'll give them a lot more strength. Another thing you might want to do is cut little metal strips, kind of stick them on these, on the ends of these, on the sides, kind of bend them up a little bit. There's not a single straight antenna on this blimp. They're all kind of crushed in and bent and just smashed. So just feel free to adapt these 3D models any way you choose. You can heat them up and bend them if you wanted to. Styrene strips, little metal, aluminum shavings, whatever you'd like to do on these antennae, just to make them look much more rough. These are your 3 monitor frame options. Your first one is this guy. He comes with a printed-in main frame, so you can put a printout of a geisha on top of this. This is your main piece. You've got 2 side tabs. You can either 3D print these guys, or you can just cut flat styrene. You have this main top bar. This is a light, I believe, so you can custom make your own styrene frame. But there is your main frame. You can put all these together and print them as one piece, or just print your main piece and use styrene or wood for your remainder pieces. The second version is this guy. It's the same thickness. If I can rotate this. This is the same thickness as your regular frame, except it's missing its middle, and that's for you to put on an LED screen, a tablet, a TFT screen, whatever you'd like. So that's a normal thickness, and I also made a frame that is very thin as just a topper for a tablet or a TFT screen, LED display screen. So this is a very thin topper. And so far I've test printed, I think, the topper piece and this regular piece, just a test fit, at a 30-inch blimp scale as default scale. This will fit I believe a 10-inch tablet. A 9 or a 10-inch. Just as a big side note, make sure that you resize this frame to your tablet size. If you're shrinking the blimp down to a 24-inch blimp, you're probably going to want to use maybe an 8-inch tablet. Just make sure that your insides of the frame, from here to here and here to here, fit the screen size, not including the bezel of your tablet. So just make sure in Cura or whatever your slicing software is, just resize this. Just squeeze it in, squeeze it out, make your little adjustment, and then print. These are the shadow boxes. The kit uses 8 of these larger shadow boxes and 2 of these smaller rectangular guys. So the idea is that you would put an LED behind these, and there is a tube I engineered into these guys. So an LED will go in here. Your graphics will be printed on acetate or maybe even just paper, and placed on top of this so they illuminate from behind. And same for these skinnier shadow boxes. But anyways, this is how they are. This is version 1. Just print 8 of these square ones and 2 of these rectangular ones. Before I start into more detail on these parts, I want to make it clear that the supports that attach the front gondola, the rear gondola, and the monitors, all of that support structure is not 3D modeled. That you're going to have to do with brass rod. I'll probably have a tutorial on that later. I haven't brazed rod in a long time. But anyways, This kit is for the advanced builder because all of this support structure has to be physically done with brass rod or steel rod, aluminum, whatever you'd like to use. But there's a lot of work involved. This is for an advanced builder. Moving on to more detail, let's have a look at the underbelly spotlights. Those are these guys right here. There's 4. There's 2 in the front, there's 2 in the back. These are modeled with pegs that would insert inside of the hull. And it's up to you whether you want to light these or not. You can throw an LED into these. You can throw a laser pointer into these. You can put an automated moving servo light there. Up to you entirely. But those are just repeated 4 times and printed. And let's go to the engines. There's 2 sets of engines. I modeled 2 different versions. These guys are what you see in the final film. I also modeled round engines. That was the first version of these engines that was axed during development. Ridley wanted changes to the model, and they axed the round engines for these skinnier dual engines. But you have a choice. You can use either. I think most people are going to use this, but if you wanted to build the pre-filming model, you can go ahead and use those round engines. Before I close out this video, I'm going to give you a couple little tips on printing the hulls. Everything else is small enough to be done pretty easily. I'm going to import the top shell, the haft top shell. And as you can see, it is scaled at 30 inches. This is default scale. Much too large to print this guy on something like, well, this is a, I'm in Cura on a CR10 S4. So what we need to do is segment this. So I've got this in Mesh Mixer. Let me show you. There's a bunch of tutorials online on YouTube on how to segment models. So I'm just going to do this really quick. If you need a more in-depth tutorial, just head to YouTube and type in Mesh Mixer segmenting models. So I'm going to cut this guy in half for a CR10 S4. It's a 400 millimeter cube build surface, build volume. I'm going to go to Edit, Plane Cut. I'm going to cut this model in half the other way, so I'm going to turn this plane cut to 90 degrees. And we're going to have a look. That seems to be pretty much the center. I'm going to make sure that my plane cut type is slice and keep both. Fill type is remeshed fill. I'm going to accept. I'm going to separate shells. And here we can see it also separated the wires. So this is a chance for you. I mentioned this earlier in the video. This is your chance to actually, if you wanted to make those wires separate, you can take them right off. You can just remove these wires. I'm not going to do that for right now. So I'm going to select the wires, select that hull. I'm going to combine. Same thing over here. I'm going to select the wires, select the hull, combine. Okay, now we have a top. We have a front half, a back half. Let's go ahead and save out these STLs. Export. STL, I'm going to call this half of top half. And now I'm going to show you that this can be done, each half can be done on a CR10 S4 in 2 pieces. FDM prints. Alright, slice is finished. Let's go ahead and preview this. And here this is without any supports. I couldn't guarantee that this will print perfectly. It probably will, but it's going to be up to your best judgment to orient these parts slices needed. If you have a smaller machine, say you have just a CR10, you might want to split this hole into 6 parts instead of 4. But you will get there. And let's see, what else? I think that's it. I mean, it's basically a simple model. Besides the multiple antenna, there's really not a lot of parts. But boy, it is a thing of beauty. And applying those decals and finding their locations, that's going to be a lot of fun for you guys. If you'd like to learn more about this Blade Runner blimp project, follow the links in the description. Thanks for watching, guys.